Hey, and welcome to another podcast for Bonsai Stuff by me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. A podcast designed around Melbourne, Australia, what we do here, what's appropriate for our trees. And this episode, I want to talk about this time of year is obviously autumn, and I want to talk about the things that I'm doing with my collection around about this time of the year. One of the big ones, which I mentioned in the last podcast, was watering. I know from having just walked around my collection that there is definitely a tendency that things can dry out much quicker than what you anticipate. The wind seems to have a massive impact, or does have a massive impact on how quickly the soil mix will dry out. So you need to be mindful that when you're walking around, the surface of the pot may not give a true indication of the moisture content of the soil mix. So you want to be careful that things don't dry out quicker than expected. They are going through a light growth patch at the moment, which will obviously change very quickly as the daylight hours get shorter and shorter and we head towards dormancy. You do need to be mindful that you don't let the trees get too wet as well, so you don't want to be flogging them with water like you would in the warmer months. I saw the forecast this morning and we've got some 30-degree days coming for the next week with cooler temperatures at night, so the trees will start to head towards the dormancy period, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. So watch the watering and make sure you stay on top of it. Another thing with my bonsai that I look at this time of the year is the sacrifice branching and how it's affecting the tree. By that I mean when we run a sacrifice branch, you're using it for a purpose, whether that's to thicken a branch or thicken the trunk, to develop a certain area on the tree or give increased strength to that area of the tree where you're letting something grow freely. You need to be mindful that the tree's resources get allocated based on what the tree thinks is best for it, as opposed to what you'd like to see develop with your trees. So, with that in mind, when you look at a sacrifice branch that's got excessively long, let's say it's grown for the whole season or possibly even a couple of years, the tree's then backing that branch to become a major source of energy for the future of the tree. It will push more resources to that sacrifice branch, therefore having it extend quite quickly. But that could be at the expense of other areas of the tree. So you might find that as the sacrifice branch gets stronger, other areas of the tree, of your bonsai, will start getting weaker and weaker. So this time of year is when I look at pruning back or forcing the tree to reallocate its resources elsewhere through pruning of the sacrifice branches. It may be something simple like taking just the end off the branch and therefore forcing it to grow another bud further back down the sacrifice branch and pushing that out further. Or it might be time to actually remove the entire sacrifice branch and have another bud or another branch in that particular area of the tree take off and become a sacrifice branch in its own right. So you just need to be mindful that just letting it continue to grow and have it allocate its own energy will be possibly to the detriment of your tree. So autumn's a great time as it starts to thin out. The tree's still got capability to heal if you do make a cut on the sacrifice branch at this time of the year before it goes into the dormancy period. So now's the time to review your sacrifice branches and whether you still need them. If you do need them, are they getting too strong? If they're getting too strong, do I need to prune them and maybe regrow or pick another branch for that sacrifice branch to continue with? So another really important task this time of year, which I seem to rabbit on about quite frequently, is fertilising your trees. And I see a lot of customers, a lot of students come through for classes, workshops and all that sort of thing, and I honestly feel that the most underdone task for bonsai is fertilising or feeding your trees. It seems like common sense that you need to feed your trees in order to get them strong, but it can be seen as a bit of a chore. and that, the tree's still surviving, so why do I need to do it all? Possibly that it's, a little bit here and a little bit there is enough for the tree to go on. But we don't want the tree just to survive. We want it to really kick on and thrive. And the healthier your tree is, the more options you've got for developing your bonsai, but also the less likely you are to be worried by things like, pest and disease, because, a strong, healthy tree can fight these things off on their own accord. So by not fertilising your trees, you might get into a holding pattern, which means that, is the tree really going to get to the level that you want it to get to, or is it just going to maintain where it's at right now? A little bit of growth here, a little bit of growth there. Is that really what you want, or do you want to keep pushing it harder? And, I use the tea bag method, which I was shown when I was in Japan, which is really simple, really easy. I use a 50-50 mix of a blood and bone and just an organic pellet-based fertiliser, which you can get from any generic hardware store, which you'll know where I'm talking about. But you can pick up these fertilisers anywhere as long as they are completely organic based. And the theory with it is that every time you're watering your tree, the tree's being offered something of a nutrient base that will help it, and it can take what it needs when it needs it, as opposed to like a liquid feed, which is only available when you immediately supply it to the tree. And if it doesn't need it at that point and you keep watering the trees and it washes out of the soil mix, then the tree needs it when it's not there. You think you're doing the right thing, but is it always the right thing to do? I think the easiest and most successful method that I've come across is this tea bag method. It's really simple, really easy to do. So feed your trees. Autumn's a great time for feeding. It builds up their strength prior to going to dormancy, which means spring comes around, they jump out of their skin, they're ready to go, which is what we want. So feed your trees. One task which hasn't started just yet, but will very, very soon, is a final structural prune of your deciduous trees before they go into winter dormancy. Very nice, look very full, very beautiful tree with a fantastic nabari, very beautiful trunk, but everything looked a little bit long on the branches. So when we were talking about it, and we talked about the prune that needed to happen, it was, I mentioned that to the fellow that it would go home looking more like a plucked chook at this stage of year. And by that I mean we've come back, right back to the very first pair of buds on a branch. The primary branching's in place, the secondary branching's in place. It was a finer, more delicate ramification that we started working on, and they'd all been allowed to grow a little bit long, 3, 4, 5 sets of buds. So what we did is we pruned right back to the very first pair of buds that we could find on those finer branches. So thereby, we removed some of the density of the foliage, of the branch structure. But in doing so, the next round of growth that comes along means that we'll have greater division of our branches and therefore a tighter, finer ramification on that tree, which is what we're after. We're after fine, delicate growth on the extremities. That thick, those thick branches are not what we need. We want fine on the outside of the apex, on the outside of our branches. We want to go for a finer, more delicate growth. So the structural pruning that needs to get done in autumn is vital for that. That you look at how far you can cut back on your branches, your sub branches, to see where the next phase of growth is going to come from. If you leave something long now and you don't prune it back hard enough, then the next round of growth that we get is going to make that branch even longer. So we start pushing too far away from the structure of the tree, and we start losing the tight growth that we want in very compact to our bonsai, which is what, in my opinion, makes a good bonsai. So structural pruning is about to occur, and has occurred with some of the deciduous. Another thing that hasn't happened yet, but it will happen very soon, is colour change of our deciduous trees. So once they've changed colour and they go to that, the reddy, orangey, yellow, browny type colour, again, then gets to the point where the resources from that leaf have been extracted by the tree, and therefore the leaf is going to fall off the branch. What I was taught was that we look to remove that leaf just prior to falling off, prior to it becoming useless to the bonsai. So when we do get ready for leaf fall, I look to bring the trees into the workshop, take off all the remaining leaves in one hit. So therefore they're not falling off onto your benches as well. And that's another thing you need to be mindful of, is to remove the debris from around your trees off the surface of the pot. So it's just breeding ground for the bugs that we don't need. If you leave debris around the grounds, on the bench tops, on top of your pots, you're really asking for pests to come in there, which may not be a problem right now, but once they take hold and they get stronger and greater numbers, you'll find that, you know, when spring comes around, you may have troubles, as opposed to if you can remove the leaves as they're falling and keep it nice and clean, keep it hygienic, that area, then you won't have those issues come spring. So that's it. We've come to the end of another podcast, Bonsai Stuff by me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. If you want to get in touch with me, please do so via the website, bonsaimatsu.com, Facebook, Instagram, any of the social media outlets. Let me know if I can help with anything, as I've been in contact with a few of you already. It'd be great to hear from any others that want to have a chat. So just recapping on today, we've looked at some of the tasks, the general tasks for your bonsai at this time of the year, which is just at the starting time of autumn. What you're watering, be very careful, be very mindful that even though it's maybe not hot, the trees are still going to be taking up water, and the pots and the soil mix will be drying out, sometimes at quite a rapid rate of knots. So just be careful it doesn't get too dry. The other was sacrifice branches. Time to look at them, see whether they're doing the job that they should be doing, or whether they're taking resources that could be allocated elsewhere on the tree. We talked about pruning those, shortening them, reducing them, removing them entirely. Another was feeding. Get on feeding. Feed. Autumn's a great time for feeding your trees. Make sure that you're cleaning up around the benches. Don't provide a haven for pests to get in there. And, weed your trees. Make sure you get rid of those weeds out of the tree. It seems to be a never-ending issue with bonsai. But anyway, it's been enjoyable, been great again. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And good bonsai. Until next time.